Our school is not allowed to enter exactly on Sundays. Not only is our school not allowed to enter on Sundays every week, but once a month. We were told that whoever came to our school on Sunday might never come back. Then my friend and I was a student long ago, then in 7th grade, now an adult, but I remember the story and decided to share, decided to see if this was true, and the 4 of us went. We entered the school and looked around. At first it looked like a school. We went up to the 2nd floor. We decided to go as a group so we wouldn't lose anyone. And then the light came on in the bathroom. My classmate Sergey, not believing everything, went in there alone. I don't want to hide it myself, but I got scared. After about 5 minutes we heard Sergey screaming. We all panicked and ran to the 3rd floor. I don't know why we didn't run to the 1st floor and get out of there. On the 3rd floor, I saw that the math room was open. I ran to it and closed it. There were chairs and desks in the aisles. I wondered how I could get out. Sergey was already gone, and I thought the same thing could happen to us. Then something started banging hard on the door. Then I thought about jumping out of the window, but when I opened the window, I was afraid to jump because it was the 3rd floor, but there was nothing to do, so we started jumping. Vlad jumped first, landed in the snow and said, "It didn't hurt." Then Igor jumped, and finally I jumped, but by that time the door had already been kicked in, and I only saw it out of the corner of my eye. It was big, black, with red eyes, and that's all I saw. Finally, when I got home, it was 12 o'clock. I went straight to bed, woke up, and went to wash my face. Then my mother asked me in an angry voice where I had been yesterday and where Sergey had gone. I told my mom everything. She was shocked. After that, my mother immediately enrolled me in gymnasium again. Since then, I haven't seen any of my friends, and now I live a happy life. By the way, I found out later that the bathroom was covered in blood, with Sergey's head hanging on it, and the inscription, "You videoed believe in me." Good luck to all of you, and take care of yourselves. The front windows of the school overlooked the descent to Turjanka, and it was clear that all the windows had been blown out, except for the one in the middle. After listening for a while, I noticed that there was a knock on the window, but no one was there. The 4 kilograms key that was hanging on the door was torn off, and there were some figures wandering around the school. We thought they were homeless people and decided to leave for good since it was already getting dark outside. But Yashi was interested, and the next evening he dragged me to school. There I met a group of kids about 10 years old. One of them told me that he had found a woman's blouse with blood on it, and his father told him that the school was run by a crazy teacher and that it was closed because he had killed 5 female students. This school was the first school in our village, over 80 years old. Half an hour later, when it started to get dark, we heard a low growl coming from the school. It sounded like a dog's growl. The children screamed and ran away, and we ran to the village house that was nearby. There, Zinaida Stepanovna, the librarian, told us about the school. She said, "It was a long time ago when I first came to the club. It was a long time ago when I first came to the club. The principal of the school was a woman, his mistress. Not only did she reject the poor teacher, but she took his place. Then, in a fit of rage, she raped the principal and set the school on fire. Many died in the fire, and the teacher escaped into the catacombs. The school was soon closed, but the teacher could never be caught. A few years later, an oligarch bought the school to build a private hospital. To protect the school building, he built an enclosure under the windows and placed a wolfhound there. Then he started feeding the mongrels who found shelter there. People were outraged, but there was nothing they could do. The devil was lying covered in blood, and the mongrel was cowering in the corner without appetite. Apparently he had had enough. And the owner stood by the window, laughing and dreaming that one day people would be his dog's dinner too." Zinaida told us this and quietly retired to her reading room. We listened to this story with such fear that Yasha almost fainted. The aviary, or rather, its remains, still reminds us of the terrible events of This high school horror movie is about a 15-year-old boy from the United States. Many of his classmates hate him, and the local bullies don't miss a chance to make fun of him. The boy himself is very thin, and as you know, the strong always hurt the weak. But that wasn't the boy's only problem. His eyesight was so bad that he had to wear glasses with large lenses. His classmates mostly ignored him, and only when other boys made fun of him did he get their attention. Because he was lonely and unfriendly, he never left class at recess, but sat at his desk, rereading lesson plans or looking at his cell phone. He was quite shy because of the constant taunts from his classmates. Besides the taunts from his classmates, there were other bullies at school who were constantly beating him up and doing him mean things. It was a trio of older students, and because of them, the boy spent all his free time during recess in class. But that didn't always help the poor boy, and often the bullies still found ways to bully him. The older students seemed to enjoy these bullying. One day, 3 students caught him in the bathroom. Apparently, he was bored and decided to have a little fun. Teachers don't go into places like that, so it was the perfect place to bully the weak schoolboy. They decided to drop the victim's head in the toilet bowl. 2 high school students lifted the poor boy upside down and plunged his head into the toilet bowl, while a third flushed the water. The boy gasped, and the bullies just choked him with disgusting laughter. At some point, the 3 bullies realized something was wrong, and the boy stopped resisting. The boy stopped resisting, and when they tried to pull him up and put him on his feet, he just fell to the floor. They realized that what they had done was irreparable. His eyes clouded with fear, his mouth froze, and he made a last effort to catch his breath. There was a sepulchral silence. The 2 bullies stood paralyzed with fear, and the third, the central figure of the trio of psychopaths, quickly ran to the door and slid the deadbolt shut. The teenagers calmed down a bit and decided to hide the bodies. None of them wanted to go to jail. The biggest bully knew he had to get rid of the bodies without attracting attention. So he stole a hacksaw from the janitor's closet and used it to trim the treetops around the school. Back in the bathroom, they began dismembering the bodies. When they finished, they took some of the bodies to the gymnasium, where they found a hiding place behind the wall that only they knew about. The body parts were hidden in this hiding place, and the hooligans vowed never to speak of the incident again. A month passed. Meanwhile, a school legend had recently emerged in this school. If you go into the bathroom, look in the mirror and say, "I know who killed you," the murdered boy's face would appear behind you for a moment. The bullies were arrested and taken to jail, where they were subjected to prolonged bullying by a common criminal who not only beat these school children, but did much worse. The court later sentenced the bullies to 15 years in prison, but the ringleader was sentenced to life in prison, the maximum penalty in the state, for his ingenious plan to dismember the bodies. Today, the school is in its usual state, at the request of the parents of the murdered boy. The den in the gymnasium was bricked up, and a plaque was placed on the wall with information about the crime and punishment. Since then, however, the sounds of footsteps, groans, and screams have been heard throughout the school from the ill-fated bathroom, where the body of the 15-year-old was dismembered, making the guards afraid to leave their allotted room on dark nights. Lately, the school says that if you walk into that bathroom, look in the mirror and say, "I know who killed you." The murdered boy's face will appear behind you for a moment. In a quiet provincial town stood an old school, surrounded by deserted fields and ancient trees. The dusky crossroads school had always caused terror and anxiety among students and teachers. There were rumors of mysterious disappearances and supernatural phenomena that took place within its walls. I, Michael, was one of the students at that school. Every day when I woke up and looked out the window, my heart clenched with anxiety. The school was shrouded in a veil of mystery, and no one knew what lurked behind its doors. One cold autumn day, my friends and I decided to spend the night at the school to expose its secrets. We packed all the necessary equipment: flashlights, cameras, and voice recorders. After dinner, we climbed the fence and made our way inside the school. The deeper we got into the school corridors, the stronger the atmosphere of fear and uncertainty became. Tattered posters hung on the walls. The books in the library were dusty and dusty. The air was permeated with the smell of old age and something unpleasant. When we reached the second floor, we heard rustling and muffled noises from far away. My heart beat even faster. We decided to follow the sounds and headed toward one of the classrooms. Slowly, we found ourselves in front of a closed classroom door. Something incomprehensible was going on behind it. I raised my hand and carefully opened the door. What we saw made us freeze with horror. The classroom was in chaos. Tables were overturned, chairs scattered across the floor, paintings on the walls were ripped up, and vague and frightening messages were written on the blackboard. Something invisible and powerful was clearly present. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us, and the room was shrouded in total darkness. We were trapped inside the classroom, and there were quiet footsteps and shrill laughter outside. What was going on in that school? Who or what was behind this horrible atmosphere? We realized that our whole plan had turned into a nightmare, and we would have to fight whatever was lurking in the dark corners of Twilight Crossroads. We turned around in a panic, trying to make out anything in the gloomy room. Suddenly, the lights came on, and a dark figure in a black cloak stood before us. He slowly approached, radiating an unpleasant aura. Our fear reached its peak, and we realized that we could not handle this force alone. Terrified, we began screaming and banging on the door, hoping that someone would hear our calls for help. Suddenly, the door swung open, and the headmaster burst into the classroom, looking at us with disbelief. He explained that the school was suffering from a long history of unknowable phenomena, and a team of psychics he had called in to get to the bottom of what was going on. They were able to curb the dark forces and save us from danger. The principal apologized for the state of the school and promised to take steps to put things in order. As time passed, Twilight Crossroads began to play with new colors again. The school was freed from its sinister energies, and we students were once again able to study and spend time within its walls in peace. But we will never forget that terrible night when we faced the unknown and felt the power of darkness. This story reminded us that some secrets are better left unsolved, and not to penetrate into a world where mysterious forces play their dangerous game.